episode 3 of Talkin Movies with Sam and Raj. I'm one of your co-hosts, Raj Sawhney, and with me today, as always, is Sam. How you doing, Sam?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good. How's your week?
Doing right. We have a lot to talk about today, don't we?
Oh, yeah, we do. Let's get straight into it. So let's dive into our first main topic. If this is your first time joining us, what we do is we run through some of the news through the week, and then we talk about some reviews of movies that were released, and then we'll hop into a little bit of awards season talk. So first big topic of the week was very exciting. We got a little bit more information about Damien Chazelle's new project, Babylon. Damien Chazelle, obviously director of Whiplash and La La Land. His new project has been slated now for Christmas of 2021. Paramount has got the rights. And if you haven't heard about the project before, it's starring Emma Stone and Brad Pitt, and it's going to take place around the time that silent films are transitioning into talkies. What do you think about this release date, Sam? Does it indicate sort of an awards push?
Oh, definitely, because Hollywood just loves movies about itself.
Yeah, very true.
And
very true.
And it's just like we have Damien Chazelle, like one of the hottest directors working right now, Emma Stone and Brad Pitt. So it's like everything going for it.
Yeah. Do you like the sort of pairing of Chazelle re-teaming with Emma Stone, obviously, but now adding Brad Pitt after the sort of year that Brad Pitt has this year?
There's a great potential in this movie. I think the cast is amazing with the director and the story they have. I think it's definitely going to be in the awards contention in 2021.
No, I agree 100%. What's your sort of relation with Damien Chazelle's previous stuff?
I adore his movies. I thought First Man was good, not as good as Whiplash or La La Land, but both of those movies that I just mentioned are incredible. Like, I can't talk enough about them.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually recently revisited La La Land since it was. I saw it 2 or 3 times when it was in theaters, and then I revisited it. And I think it actually might be my favorite of his now after having seen it a couple times. I used to love Whiplash. That was sort of my favorite before. First Man, I was mixed on. I like it. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's an excellent movie, but I think La La Land and Whiplash are both like incredible movies. And I think the topic of this is kind of prime for what Chazelle does best.
Yeah, definitely. I've been meaning to rewatch La La Land. I saw Whiplash recently. I think it's still pretty great. Like J.K. Simmons gives his career best in that movie, and I'm just really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I am as well. So next thing up on the docket is another prestige director getting a little bit more traction under his next project. Paul Thomas Anderson, famous director of There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, etc. We got a little bit more information about his next project from a Hollywood Reporter this week. He's sort of going back into the 1970s, and he's telling a story about a high school student and child actor who's living in the San Fernando Valley, which is sort of a neighborhood around LA. And this is where he set some of his most acclaimed projects, sort of like Boogie Nights and Magnolia. So we got a little bit of news that's going in production in 2020, and we'll probably see it maybe competing against Chazelle's project in the end of 2021. Are you excited about this one, Sam?
Yeah, it's like a rehash of 2017 where we had First Man and Phantom Thread. So I think it's pretty exciting to see them both going head-to-head again in 2021.
Yeah, I know I asked you a little bit about your relationship with Damien Chazelle. What's your relationship with PTA? Because he's a little bit more of a divisive filmmaker.
He is. I think his movies are great. I've seen Punch Drunk Love. I've seen There Will Be Blood. I think it's like one of the greatest movies ever made. I saw Phantom Thread and I thought it was good. So I think I am looking forward to this one. I just want to like dive more deep into his filmography before I watch this one.
Yeah. Do you like this sort of thing of him going back into like his roots and sort of like Boogie Nights and Magnolia were sort of some of those films that really put him on people's radars?
Right.
Do you think him returning to that sort of beloved atmosphere will do him well after Phantom Thread was like such a change for things that he's done in the past?
Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting considering he's like been branching out into different genres and different forms of narratives. So I think it's like considering that all the experience he's had this past decade or past 2 decades, I think it's pretty exciting to just see what this movie's going to be like.
Yeah, I'm hoping he doesn't get too I don't want to say full of himself because that sounds a little aggressive, but certain movies that he's made recently have been like pretty heady, and I'm hoping he grounds this one a little bit more. And I know that's a little bit different from PTA style, but I feel like when he's more grounded, he does best. My favorite PTA movie is Punch Drunk Love, and I feel like that is such like a, it's quirky. It definitely has that PTA style, but it feels like one of his most grounded and like sort of down to earth movies, and I think that's why it works so well.
Is anybody attached to this project besides?
I don't think so. I don't think there are any actors attached. Is there anybody that you'd like to see in this project? Any young actors?
I want to see. I don't want to say the cliches like Lucas Hedges and Timothy Chalamet.
Sure, sure.
I think it'd be pretty exciting to see Kelvin Harrison in this project.
Oh yeah,
Honestly.
oh yeah, we're big Kelvin Harrison fans on this
Yeah.
podcast. Somebody who I want to see work with PTA is Anya Taylor-Joy, who is in The Witch,
That'd be
and
pretty
she's
good.
coming up
Yeah.
in Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. I think she has sort of like that interesting dynamic where she can work in this sort of PTA world, these worlds that he creates, but she can
Hmm.
also lend something pretty interesting to it. We saw that with The Witch, where she sort of enveloped herself in this really old timey English lore, but she added this sort of unique performance to it that we hadn't really seen in a movie kind of like that. So I think she's she's in her 20s, but I think she could play sort of like a senior in high school if that's the route that they're going.
She still looks it. I mean, if you saw Thoroughbred, she plays a teen in that one.
Exactly, exactly.
She didn't miss a beat.
I don't know if I think the main characters actually might be a male actor, but so she'd probably have to be a supporting. Somebody else who I like is Charlie Plummer, who is in Lean on Pete. I don't know if you saw that,
No.
but he's also a great sort of young actor. Him, Kelvin Harrison, Anya Taylor-Joy, those are some talents that I'd like to see attached to this project.
Yeah, it sounds pretty exciting, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and let's
Does it have a title attached to it?
It doesn't. There's like really no information at all other than what I've said so far. There's pretty bare bones, and usually a lot of PTA stuff is kind of kept under wraps until we get a little bit closer to it.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully it does. I would love to see it compete against Babylon in that Christmas 2021 slot. That would be a lot of fun to see those two go against each other.
Yeah, it's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. So next up is another sort of respected director gaining a little bit more traction on his next project. Taika Waititi, who just made Jojo Rabbit, which is one of my favorite movies of the year, rounded out his cast for his upcoming movie called Next Goal Wins, which is based off a documentary from 2014. It's going to tell the story of a American Samoan soccer team who were trying to get into like the FIFA World Cup in 2014 or right before 2014. And he's actually cast somebody, I hope I pronounce this right, Kaimana, who is a non-binary actor, who's going to play actually the first non-binary player to play in the World Cup.
Okay.
So I think that's really interesting, and I think Taika is a pretty progressive, interesting director, and I think him for making this move. And this actor is actually joining Fassbender and Elizabeth Moss as part of the cast. So I think this cast is shaking up pretty well. What do you think?
Yeah, this is something I'd want to watch. Like the way Taika treats his stories with such respect and such, care.
Mm-hmm.
Considering this casting choice, you can tell how much like he cares about the story.
Yeah.
And seeing the Fassbender and Elizabeth Moss attached to it just gives it that extra oomph.
Yeah. Do you think Taika is going to sort of employ his like unique, weird style? Like obviously he's done that, and like with Jojo Rabbit, he put his weird style in a pretty serious topic with the Holocaust, and then even he entered the Marvel universe, and that movie Thor Ragnarok is so distinctly a Taika movie before it's even a Marvel movie, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to see him do that with this sort of subject matter, or would you like to see him go a little bit more serious?
Considering the story and the actors attached, I'm thinking he's going outside of his wheelhouse. I think he's going to treat this with more respect, or not say more respect, but just more seriously. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be interesting to see how he handles this sort of story with the actors he has in hand.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Fassbender joining this too, because Fassbender's kind of had a few losses recently.
I'm with you.
And like he is, in the top 5 actors working today. There's no doubt about that. He is. If you've seen Steve Jobs, like he is just out of this world, insane when he gets the right material. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that this project puts him back on the right track, because he really hasn't. He really hasn't had a win since Steve Jobs, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's also had Macbeth, and he's also had 12 Years a Slave, and he was incredible in those movies too.
Exactly.
I've been waiting for him to get a great project to work on. I'm thinking this might be it.
I hope so. I really do hope so. And sort of rounding out this conversation of prestige directors and their next projects, Spike Lee we got a little bit more information about his next project. He's going to direct a movie called Prince of Cats. We found this out from Hollywood Reporter as well. It's based on a graphic novel by writer Ron Wimberly. And the topic is basically, it's a hip-hop spin on the Romeo and Juliet story set in the 1980s. And it's told through the cousin of, I believe it's Juliet, whose name is Tybalt. Originally, Lakeith Stanfield was attached to play the main character's role. And he's since been removed from the project, which is kind of upsetting, because I think Lakeith Stanfield is also sort of up there and as sort of the most talented young actors working today. Mm-hmm. But does this story interest you? Do you have any sort of interest in a new sort of modern retelling of the Romeo and Juliet story?
Well, yeah, I mean, considering it's based off a graphic novel and it's Spike Lee,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's something to you just keep your eye on just to see what it is.
Yeah.
Because
Have you heard of this graphic novel ever?
no, this is like the first time I'm hearing the graphic novel and the project. So
Yeah, I'm in the same place as you. Would you have liked to see Lakeith stay in that role, or do you think somebody else could kind of swap in? Again, Kelvin Harrison is somebody that I'd love to see sort of slot
mhm,
in there again.
right. I don't know. Considering I don't know anything about the graphic novel
Hmm.
and the story attached to it, I couldn't really come up with anybody that I would want to see in this role.
Sure, fair enough. So we'll sort of report on this more as we hear more about it, because this
Right.
is, as we both mentioned, the first time we're hearing about it.
Hmm.
Let's go ahead and rapid fire run through a few more big news stories from the week. Dwayne Johnson announced that Black Adam has a release date of December 22nd, 2021. I don't think that's going to compete for Oscars, but we'll see what happens with that.
Right.
Mark Wahlberg is joining Tom Holland in the Uncharted movie. He's going to play Nathan Drake's mentor, Victor Sully Sullivan. We got casting announcement officially for Prince Eric in the live action Little Mermaid. It's a newcomer, Jonah Howard King, who is replacing Harry Styles, who was originally in talks. Brandon Gleeson is joining Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand in Joel Cohen's Macbeth, which is going to be slated at A24. And finally, Nicolas Cage is going to play himself in an upcoming movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Do any of the, I'm assuming the last one is the one that stands out to you. Do you have any sort of thoughts about any of these stories, Sam?
That last one's just hilarious. If you look at the synopsis of it, it's just it doesn't make sense of how this movie even gets into production.
Hmm.
I'm just really excited to see that one and the Dwayne Johnson one. I'm
Hmm.
just thinking, the trajectory that WB is taking with their DC IP.
Hmm.
I'm just interested to see if they're gonna continue with the franchise or if they're gonna be like another solo movie.
Yeah. Do you have a preference if it's part of the DCEU or if it's its own sort of thing like Joker was?
No, I want to see a franchise just because how much I like Shazam.
Okay.
I want to see Zach Levi with Dwayne Johnson on the same screen together. I think it'd be pretty exciting to watch.
Sure, sure. I'm interested to see what they do with that as well. But yeah, sort of the standout story for me is, like you said, the Nicolas Cage story. I think this is so unique. Nicolas Cage is kind of like really bought into his sort of weirdness and like his meta-ness as a person since
Yeah,
he won Oscars back in like the 90s and stuff like that. And now he's sort of bought into this whole thing where he's playing characters that are basically
he's
amalgamation.
leaning into his archetype.
Oh, very much so. And I know you loved Mandy.
Yes,
And
I did. I
he
loved
kind
it.
of played a version of himself in a way in that movie.
It
And
was
I'm
like
really,
an off kilter face off
yeah,
character.
exactly. And I'm really interested to see what he does with this. This project could actually be kind of special. We've never seen anybody do anything quite like this, maybe even since like being John Malkovich. So I would like to see what Nicolas Cage does with this. Do you fear that he's getting like, obviously this is like as meta gets. Do you fear like that's gonna like pigeonhole him even more, or do you think this is just gonna like bolster Nicolas Cage's status?
There's no way he's coming back from where he's been. Like he's been going to like straight to DVD, crappy action movies, and
Mhm.
just movies that no one's even heard of. So I think he's just having fun with it at this point. I think this is a fine project for him.
Yeah, and you have to respect that as an actor, sort of like really buying into who he is and knowing what
Hmm.
he is. Like,
Right.
I respect that a lot, and I love what Nicolas Cage is doing.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and touch on some of the trailers that came out this week. I'm just going to list off a few, and then we can dive into a few of them. Sonic the Hedgehog got a new trailer. An animated sort of new retelling of the Scooby-Doo story, Scoob, got a new trailer. The Way Back, which is Ben Affleck reteaming with Gavin O'Connor, who directed The Accountant and Warrior. Fantasy Island, which is a new spin on an old TV show from Blumhouse, the horror movie. Seberg, which is Kristen Stewart's sort of award foray for this upcoming year, released from Amazon. Six Underground, which is the Ryan Reynolds, Michael Bay project, which is going to be on Netflix at the end of this year. And the new SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, got a new trailer.
Hmm.
I want to talk about The Way Back trailer, Sam. I think this project looks incredible. This is a story that I have personal interest in,
Right.
for for various reasons. But I'm really interested to see what Ben Affleck does with this. It's a basketball story about a guy who's struggling with alcoholism, who's called back to his hometown to coach his old basketball team. And his sort of personal struggle. I think this performance from Ben Affleck looks incredible. Is obviously very timely and close to him because he just got out of rehab for alcoholism. He's been there
Hmm.
before. And I'm excited to see what Gavin O'Connor does because Warrior is probably my favorite sports movie of all time.
Oh wow, really?
I didn't love The Accountant, but I think him and Ben Affleck are an interesting team up. And I think when giving him sort of like a more grounded, realistic story to tell like this, and going back to the sports realm, I think this could be really, really special. It has a March release date, which is not an awards friendly date per se, but it looks like a very powerful emotional story.
Mm-hmm. No, it really reminds me of Manchester by the Sea.
Yes.
With a basketball angle to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you watch the trailer, you can see like he's standing at a grave.
Mm-hmm.
So he has like his character has personal trauma to him, along with his issues with alcoholism. So I think this is gonna be a really great movie to watch. Come next year.
Yeah. Are there any of these other trailers that stand out to you?
Well, I mean, obviously Sonic the Hedgehog, just because of the controversy with the character design for Sonic.
Which, yes, we should mention they re-upped the design and made him look more like sort of the video game character that we're used to. He doesn't have like massive teeth. His eyes are sort of normal size.
He looks way better now.
He looks really good, and this movie still looks interesting. Jim Carrey obviously playing the main villain, Dr. Robotnik, who, if you're familiar with the video game property, you'll know a little bit about. And it's James Marsden is another actor that seems to like not sort of be hitting wins like Michael Fassbender. He was supposed to be in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and his part was cut. And some of his other movies, like obviously some of the X-Men movies and stuff, just sort of haven't hit the way that I think James Marsden wished they could have. Are you excited to see him in this, or does this project just still kind of look a little sloppy to you?
I didn't want to watch it just to begin with, like when I saw the first trailer.
Mm-hmm.
But the giant controversy with the character design.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I'm not really looking forward to it, but it's just interesting to see how they changed.
Sure.
Because of the backlash.
Yeah. So if you want to check out any of those other trailers, though, we're going to go ahead and put those in our show notes so you can click and watch them straight from this episode. So let's go ahead and dive into now reviews from the week. There were quite a few movies that came out this week that we want to talk about. And let's sort of start with the biggest quote-unquote release of the week, Ford vs. Ferrari, the James Mangold directed racing sort of action drama starring Christian Bale and Matt Damon as co-leads of the movie. We actually got news yesterday that this movie got an A+ cinema score, which is, coveted. Like, movies never get A+ cinema scores. It's very rare. And we kind of mentioned last week that this is sort of like, this plays into that sort of dad movie theme. And I think it does have that sort of general populist appeal. I thought this movie was really great. It's long, it's 2.5 hours, but those lead performances are incredible. You don't expect any less from Matt Damon and Christian Bale when they're playing against each other. Seeing these two movie stars go at one another it's really fun and really exciting. It has humor, it has drama, and that last like hour or so, the final race is really thrilling in the way that James Mangold captures, with a combination of practical and CGI, like captures this 24-hour Le Mans race is really incredible. I thought it's a really great movie.
I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was good.
Okay.
The first maybe half hour, 45 minutes of it felt pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really like captivated by it until like maybe, I don't know, end of the second act, I guess. Mm-hmm. There wasn't really real conflict to sink your teeth into.
Okay.
Up until the second act, because like the character for like one of the executives for Ford, throwing wrenches into like the plans of Matt Damon and Christian Bale's characters.
Yeah.
It was like the main conflict of the story, which played really well, especially in the third act.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as you said, like the character dynamics between Damon and Bale is fantastic, and Mangold's direction is great.
Yeah, I do agree that it is sort of formulaic, but I think like it's formulaic in a good way. Like James Mangold knows all the right buttons to push, and it
feels like a movie that's not made anymore.
No, yeah, very true. And we've seen James Mangold is like he's a very unique director, and in my opinion, he's one of the most consistently good directors. Copland,
Definitely.
310 to Yuma. Walk the Line and Logan now was his most recent thing. Like, this guy is just one of the most talented filmmakers working today, and like you said, he made sort of like classical sort of throwback style even in movies like Logan that like you don't really see anymore. Like his style is so unique, and I love his stuff.
Yeah, he's a great director.
Yeah. So the other sort of big release this week was Charlie's Angels, which I was able to see yesterday. The marketing for this movie was atrocious. I'm gonna be like, this movie did not look interesting to me, and then the reviews started to hit, and they were pretty positive. So I thought, let me go check this thing out and see how it is. Elizabeth Banks directing, Kristen Stewart, Ella Balinska, and Naomi Scott. It's solid. It's nothing special. It's enjoyable. I think it's made for a certain type of audience, and it plays well to that audience. And it's an enjoyable watch. I'm not gonna say that it's a bad movie in any way.
Is it similar to like the other movies, like the original ones? Like, is it like
Um,
campy in a way?
yeah, in a sense, yes, but I think Elizabeth Banks sort of understands that, and she uses it to
Hmm.
her advantage, and it
Okay.
works pretty well. The
Okay.
cast is really good. I like all like the leads of this. Seeing Kristen Stewart sort of branch out, and I know a lot of people sort of know her from Twilight, but she's honestly one of the most talented actresses working today. If you've seen some
Definitely.
Personal Shopper, is incredible, and she's really good in this sort of branching out, doing this comedy stuff. She's really funny. She's the funniest part of the movie.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Oh, by
I wouldn't
far,
have guessed that.
she is hilarious. She's great. But if you're looking for like sort of a light, easy watch on like a Friday evening and you want to get out to the movies, this is a fun watch. This is a really fun watch, and I'd say check it out. It's definitely if it's worth your time if you're interested.
I'm not interested.
I don't. I
Straight up
don't.
with you.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Again, like the marketing was not great for this movie, and I think that's what's hurting it at the box office. So if they had done a better job marketing it, maybe they would have sold a few more tickets.
Hmm.
But let's go ahead and get into now the one that I want to talk about heavily is Waves. Obviously, we touched on this a little bit last week, but this is my personal favorite movie of the year. Sam and I both saw this at Middleburg Film Festival back in mid-October. This is Trey Edward Schultz directing, as we've mentioned multiple times, Kelvin Harrison Jr., Sterling K. Brown, and Taylor Russell in a family drama. It's one of the most unique movies that I've seen. I don't want to get into spoilers in any sense, but I've never seen a movie told in such a way where like it focuses very heavily on one story and then it takes like a complete 180 and tells like almost an entirely different story in the second half of the movie. And this movie is just, it's so beautiful. The performances are 100% A plus, like perfect performances.
Yeah.
I want it to get Oscar love. It's kind of on the fringe right now, and we could see it sort of slip in there.
Well, I mean, it has a pretty good box office at the moment, considering like the limited release it's had.
Yeah, right. This week it is just in LA and New York. It'll expand to more theaters next week. So if you're in the DC area like us, go check it out when it comes out. Please support this movie. A24.
Yeah.
That they do no wrong. And so what are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's a fantastic movie. I mean, I've been thinking about this movie ever since I saw it. Like, I haven't not thought about it since I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like it has the best soundtrack. It has the best ensemble performance.
Yes.
It has I think I've had this like this sort of pattern every year where I pick like a personal favorite for my number one, but the movie I think is the best of the year is my number two. Like 2017 was Logan, number two was 2049. Last year was Hereditary for number one. And then number two was Aroma. So I'm thinking this year, Waves is my number two. Saying that, yeah.
Nice.
I want to rewatch it. Honestly.
Yes. So if it is in your area this weekend, please check it out. I highly urge you to seek this one out if you can. And you make a good point, Sam. That ensemble is great, and that could actually help it at the SAG Awards.
I was going to mention that. Yep.
Yeah, it could get that best ensemble nomination, and that could maybe propel it towards an Oscar nomination. But we'll have to wait and see. The other sort of small release that we want to talk about, limited release, is Honey Boy, which is the autobiographical tale of Shia LaBeouf's life, written by Shia LaBeouf and starring Shia LaBeouf as his own father, and sort of like the PTSD trauma that his father put on him as a child actor. The child version of Shia is played by Noah Jupe, and the older version of him is played by Lucas Hedges. This is another one that I think will make my top 10 of the year. I think this movie is incredibly personal. It's beautifully told. The performances, again, are outstanding. And I think just sort of like the intimate nature of this story and like the sort of father-son dynamic is so interesting, and seeing what developed Shia's psyche and seeing what made him into the person that he is today is so intriguing. There's some real tearjerker moments toward the end of this movie that I think are incredible. What are your thoughts on this movie, Sam?
I was watching it last night, and I saw a couple sitting in front of me, and there was like a really intense sequence between Shia's dad character and Noah Jupe's Shia character, and like after that sequence ended, they walked out because they were so uncomfortable.
Oh wow!
But it's a really intense watch.
It is very intense. It's a quick 90-minute watch. It's not long movie, but it's like it's emotionally like it beats you down the entire time.
It's emotionally taxing, yeah.
Yeah, it is very kind of like Waves. Honestly, it's very emotionally taxing, but I think that works in his favor because like the sort of the release of all that emotion at the end of the movie is so worth it. The payoff is incredible, and that's sort of what got me.
My biggest criticism for it, like I didn't feel like it had any actual resolution. Like I feel like it just ended. It just ended. I mean, to me.
Interesting.
But I mean, it's definitely like a recommendable watch.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I thought the resolution was sort of in there's sort of a I don't want to spoil it again, but there's sort of a moment between Shia and his father, and I thought that was resolution. But I'm interested. I'd love to talk to you more about the sort of off recording, Sam, and see sort of more of your opinion. But
No, yeah,
I think we both recommend this movie. It's really great. Again, this is going to be expanding over the next couple weeks, so if it comes near you, seek it out. It should be on Amazon Prime Video early next year because it is a Prime release. So if you don't get to it in theaters, watch it once it hits Prime. So let's go ahead and get into now a little bit of a change for us. We're going to go into a TV review of The Mandalorian, which is the Star Wars TV show that's airing on Disney Plus. We've had the chance to see the first 2 episodes now. Sam, why don't you go ahead and give me your thoughts on what this series? And again, we're going to get a little bit into spoilers for this one in particular. So if you haven't caught up on the show, skip ahead about 3 to 5 minutes or so. And we'll be done with it, but we are going to get into spoilers for the first 2 episodes of Mandalorian starting now.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty exciting. The first episode was a really great hook to start off the show. It's a short 40 minutes, and then the second episode is a short 33 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think they played well against each other because like the first episode is so like narrative heavy, and it gives you so much information about like the characters and like the narrative structure and like how like the story will operate and all that. And I think the second episode was a good fluff episode. Not a lot happens, but it's like a great like character interaction episode between like certain like Mando and like Baby Yoda.
Yep.
And I just think I'm really excited to see how much more this story will progress going forward.
Yeah, I love the first episode. I think it's like you're saying, that short runtime is actually very beneficial to this. It's quick, it's good, it's right to the point. In that ending moment when they sort of reveal Baby Yoda is a crazy moment. That's something that I would have never expected to have happened in this series. And I think you actually tweeted this, that we have to protect Baby Yoda at all costs, and it's 100%. Like, Baby Yoda's adorable. It's so funny watching this character in the background just sort of doing these things and operating while the Mandalorian's like doing his sort of intense broodingness, like whatever he's doing.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think about his force sensitivity?
I think that's a really good moment. That's my favorite moment of episode 2, but that actually sort of transitioned me into I didn't like episode 2. I loved episode 1, and episode 2 felt like sort of a bottle episode that didn't add anything to the narrative except for that forced moment. And I wish that forced moment had more substance to the story itself. Obviously in episode 2, the Mando's interacting with the Jawas, and he's he's going on this sort of like one-off mission, and it felt kind of pointless to me. Especially in a series where we're getting episodes that are going to be so short. If they're going to be under the 45-minute mark in most of these episodes, I want each of those episodes to have substance, and this episode had no substance. It really didn't build much character for me. I did like the Baby Yoda stuff again, but for the Mandalorian's personal arc, I don't feel like it really gave me enough for me to say this episode's a good episode.
Well, we had like 2 episodes in 1 week.
Yes.
I don't think the one that gave us like too much right at the beginning.
Which is fair, which is completely fair. But I believe this series is going to be, at least this first season is only going to be 10 episodes, and I want even if it is a 30-minute episode, I want it to be more meaningful than what episode 2 was.
Like, you want them to make the most of it.
Yeah. You and I are both anime fans, and I don't want to say that it's filler.
Okay.
But it felt more like filler than it actually did like narrative substance to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair, that's fair.
But I loved episode 1, and I still am very excited to see where this series goes. I'm assuming that the rest of the episodes will not be that way, because we've still got a lot to sort of see, and the story really hasn't progressed all that much since episode 1 ended. Yeah. So we've got a lot of narrative to tell, and I'm excited to see where this thing goes. But
me too.
Right now, it's 50-50 for me. I loved episode 1, didn't like episode 2 all that much.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and dive into the awards race now. This is sort of the time for Sam and I to discuss category by category what we think is what we're going to see in the Oscar race, who might get nominated, who might get snubbed. So we'll sort of start this off by saying that we did get news that Ricky Gervais is going to host the Golden Globes again. He's hosted it before, so if you're interested in seeing sort of what he's done, you can go on YouTube and see his previous years. He's pretty funny, but he did say this is his last year doing it. I know people are sort of mixed on Ricky Gervais. Do you like his stuff?
No, I think he's annoying, honestly. he's like he leans too much into his like atheist jokes and all that, and just
Okay.
it becomes so repetitive. And he's just like he has no new material.
Sure.
But I
I
mean,
think.
I've seen like the other Golden Globes, and he's pretty funny on them. Like the last one, he's pretty like drunk
Uh-huh.
hosting. So I think
Yeah.
that was like a pretty fun dynamic with him and as hosting the award show.
Yeah, I think that's what I like about him. He doesn't really care what other people think about his material.
Right.
And he's not going to sort of cater to the masses, and I like
To
that.
a
I appreciate.
fault.
Well, yeah, to a fault for some people. I like it. I think he's been funny in previous years. When he does get sort of like really drunk on stage, it can get a little irritating to watch. But he makes these like offhanded offensive comments that I know people will not like, but I find them oftentimes pretty funny.
We'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you kind of going off this now? Do you want to see the Oscars go hostless again, like they did last year, or do you want to see a host?
I like those like opening sequences they have when they have hosts, like the one with like when La La Land came out. I think that was pretty fun.
Mhm.
Who was hosting that year? Kimmel.
That was Kimmel, yeah.
Yeah, that was I think that was a great sequence. I mean, beyond that, I mean, those with or without the host, it was still like 3 hours long, so I don't think it makes a difference. I just like the banter like the host brings to the show.
Yeah. I personally I don't care about the runtime. The Oscars is one night out of the entire year. Like, let's enjoy it. I know Sam and I have talked about this before, but now in the past couple of years, I've sort of shut off my phone during the Oscars because I don't want to see people like complaining about the host and complaining about who wins. I just want to celebrate what's going on and like celebrate these filmmakers getting their moments.
That's
And,
exactly what I do on Twitter.
Yeah.
I love reading those hate tweets. It's hilarious.
Some people do love that. I find it exhausting, but some people love it, and that's why people do it, which is, credit to them. If they have the energy to do it, props to them. Like, I just don't. I'm an old man, a grumpy old man, and I don't want to put up with that anymore. But, I kind of do want to see a host come back for the Oscars. I liked having Kimmel up there. He obviously
He's
had
a great host.
yeah, he is. He's really great. I like his talk show. He sort of had that snafu, right? Moonlight La La Land was him hosting. He obviously didn't make the announcement, but he was hosting that year, and he handled it pretty well. And then he came back next year and played on that, and I thought he was funny. I think he's a really good host. But it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether or not like this hostless thing helps continue to bolster the ratings, because last year was the highest rated Oscars in the past few years, and I think that's partially because like people were interested to see what the show was going to be like without a host, and some people thought it flowed well. I did think it flowed well also, but I just like having sort of a consistent presence on stage.
Yeah, me too. And I just as I mentioned, I like the banter like the hosts bring. If you're gonna bring a host onto the show, onto the award show, I'd rather be like a talk show host or a comedian.
Yeah, I agree, and that's sort of what a lot of these hosts do. I would actually like to see even Stephen Colbert host. I like his.
That'd be pretty fun. Him and Jon Stewart did it all those years ago, and that was pretty fun.
And Stephen Colbert is one of those names that will draw ratings. I think he's one of those names. I know they've sort of speculated about like Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson maybe doing it. I've kind of grown a little bit tired of seeing them do all this stuff. I love both of them. I think they're both really talented. But
they're going back to Kevin Hart.
They might be. I don't. There's been like rumors.
Yeah, because like the whole reason they didn't go with the host because of the controversy was like his old tweets last year.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously Dwayne Johnson will sort of get people to tune in.
They have a great dynamic together, but we'll see.
Yeah, but I think a lot of these talk show hosts make a good point that like they're hosts. Like actors are not hosts are hosts. So I'd prefer to see one of those talk show hosts take over.
Definitely, yeah. Same.
So let's go ahead and get into the best director race this week. Not quite as substantial as the best picture race, not quite as competitive as the best picture race, but there's still quite a few big names here that we should definitely talk about. Let's go ahead and sort of talk about the two movies that we talked quite a bit about last week up front, and Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. These two have both been nominated before. Martin Scorsese has won. Quentin Tarantino has not won. And I think they're sort of both your front runners right now in this category, as those movies are in Best Picture. I personally think that if it does sort of come down to right now, I think Scorsese sort of has the edge on Tarantino, but I think as we get closer to the event, and as sort of some of these awards start to get given out, I think Quentin Tarantino might lock this up because he's never won before. And as we've seen in previous years, the career Oscars becoming a big thing. Do you have a preference between the two of these?
Yeah, I was going to mention, like, how you talked about how Quentin Tarantino has won and this might be his year. I was thinking like they might follow that pattern with Brad Pitt in supporting actor, since he's never won either. But I'm looking at like the the notes here, I'm thinking, yeah, Scorsese, Tarantino, and Bong are like locks for
Yeah.
director.
Yeah, those, and yeah, let's talk about Bong as well. Obviously, Cuarón won last year for a foreign film, and Pavel Pawlikowski was nominated for a foreign film with Cold War last year. We don't, we you know, the director race often actually does see sometimes a foreign film director get in, and obviously last year we had two. Bong is pretty much a lock. I think those three are your locks right now. Scorsese, Tarantino, and Bong are your locks.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think that Bong has as much of a chance to win this. Early on in the race, I did actually. I believe I tweeted out or put on Instagram or something like about a month or two ago that Bong, I think, was the front runner, and then The Irishman came out and built a momentum.
Definitely.
I think Bong's name really dropped in the rankings after The Irishman came out because if these I think there's only room for about like two story directors, especially in a category that only has 5 nominees, for there to be like, you know, these guys have been working and putting out quality stuff for years, and I think now that's being distributed between Scorsese and Tarantino.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. I'm just thinking, yeah, the locks are definitely there, like Scorsese, Tarantino, and Bong. But the people who you're gonna bet on are either Tarantino or Scorsese.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Just because of how much they're loved in Hollywood.
No, I agree, and you made a good point earlier about like Brad Pitt and stuff like that. And I think if we, you know, at the beginning of the night, if we see Brad Pitt win supporting actor, which is often one of the first awards, and then we continue to see Once Upon a Time win, you know, I think Tarantino is still your front runner for best original screenplay. Right now, you know, it's sort of a little bit up in the air about Margot Robbie, whether she's going to run for Once Upon a Time or for Bombshell. But I think no matter which one she runs for, she's going to get into that supporting actress race.
Right.
And if we see Tarantino win Best Director, I don't think this is going to be one of those years where they split like Chazelle and Moonlight. I think if Tarantino wins Best Director, Once Upon a Time will win Best Picture.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's usually what it looks like at this point.
So let's go ahead and get into some of those other, like those 4 and 5 spots. Let's see who might get in there. I think sort of your up next after those 3 that we just talked about is Noah Baumbach. Marriage Story, people love this movie. I've heard a lot of people use the anecdote that a lot of the Academy is divorced, like a high percentage of the Academy is divorced. And we touched on this last week as well. But I think that sort of personal aspect to it will propel Noah into the Best Director race, because like a lot of people are saying this is his best thing, and when it has that sort of respect across the board, like I've only heard maybe 1 or 2 people say they don't like this movie, and I think that'll probably put him in that number 4 spot before any of these other directors that we're going to talk about. I know you haven't seen Marriage Story yet, but what are your thoughts about this from what you're hearing?
I'm looking at the notes right now as I'm repeating over and over again. I'm saying, you know, Martin, Quentin, Bong, Noah, and like I'm thinking maybe Sam Mendes or James Mangold. Okay. But you know, considering the context of, you know, how progressive Hollywood's trying to be, do you think they might go with an all-male directing nomination, or will they with one, you know, minority in there with Bong, or will they put in like someone like Greta Gerwig or Marielle Heller or Taika?
You know, this is you bring up a really interesting point, and this is a particularly tough year because, like, you know, I definitely want to see some of these female directors in there. Obviously, Marielle Heller, I've talked about it before with you, and I believe I mentioned it last week on the podcast. She's one of my favorite filmmakers working today. Definitely. And A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is definitely one of the best movies of this year, and I would love to see her get in there. Neither of us have seen Little Women, but Greta Gerwig got nominated for Lady Bird, which is one of my favorite movies of that year, and I want to see her get in there because I love Greta Gerwig. I think she's an incredible storyteller. But this year is very competitive, and you know it's tough to sort of pick because those top 3 I think are locks. And it's, you know, when it comes down to those bottom 2, I would love to see Noah Baumbach get that recognition, and that does unfortunately only leave 1 spot open for a female director. And I hope one of them does get in there in that spot. As much as I love all these directors that are sort of in contention. I think, you know, especially because Little Women right now is sight unseen, I want to see Marielle Heller get in there in that 5 spot, but maybe that'll change when I see Little Women.
I mean, because if you think about it, like, was it 5 or 6 years ago, there was a campaign of Oscars so white. And if you have, you know, Scorsese, Tarantino in there, and you have like one token minority in Bong, what's the perception of that would be within like the wider context?
Yeah, I agree. And you just mentioned Sam Mendes for 1917. We haven't really heard a lot about 1917 yet because nobody has really seen it. But we've heard like people that read the script and people that have been in part of the production, they've like said nothing but positive things about this. And
Okay.
actually, I saw the first reaction, like official quote unquote reaction that I've seen about this movie today. Edgar Wright tweeted, I'm reading this verbatim from Twitter right now. 1917 is a thrilling, immersive, emotional journey into the heart of war. It's exceptional on a technical level, yet frequently stunning in its simplicity. Sam Mendes and DP Roger Deakins, along with their crew, created a hypnotic cinema experience that is both riveting and moving. War movies obviously do well at that. Dunkirk got Christopher Nolan his best director nomination. Saving Private Ryan obviously was respected, and this reference from Edgar Wright, a director who will probably be voting in this category, makes me think that Sam Mendes could unfortunately push out one of those female directors who I think is very deserving of that 5th spot.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that one, but we'll see how it turns out when we see it.
Yeah. A couple of the directors that you mentioned previously was Taika for Jojo Rabbit and James Mangold for Ford vs. Ferrari. Obviously, the critics have been a little bit mixed on Jojo Rabbit. It did win the Audience Award at Toronto, which bodes well for it. And the Academy seems to really like this movie. Do you think Taika could sort of get his first nomination, or do you think that he's more of like a screenplay sort of contender?
I think it'd be a fun nomination because last year I wasn't expecting Pawlikowski to get into the awards nomination. So if he does get in, it'd be like I think I would be pretty happy with that nomination.
No, for sure. And James Mangold seems like sort of like a safe bet at getting into this category.
Right.
Obviously, Ford vs. Ferrari, as we mentioned previously on this podcast, A+ cinema score. Just sort of a feel good. Everybody loves this movie. Everybody at least likes this movie.
Yeah.
A dad movie who's going to appeal to the Academy, who is majority male, older male audience. So I think James Mangold does have a good chance. That it's like this 5 to 10 spot, like the race between these 5 or 6 directors is just so tight now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really just to see who the 4 and 5 are going to who they're going to pick for 4 and 5 because those top 3 you're definitely locks.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and say Noah is a lock just because Marriage Story is so well respected in the Academy. I'm interested to see what you'll say about it once you see it, if you agree with me, because it's not like a big sort of technical marvel like something like 1917 or even The Irishman is. It's a very small story. It's told on a pretty low budget. But Noah Baumbach is like this auteur director that has been respected by the Academy. I don't believe he's been nominated for Best Director, but he's definitely been nominated for Screenplay before. And people just respect this guy. And I would also be interested to see Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig go against each other. Obviously, they're partners. I don't believe they're married, but they are dating at least.
That'd be fun, yeah.
It'd be fun to see the two of them. Like, if you've been like sort of keeping up with these like events that the Academy is doing and that other branches are doing, the two of them have been at each other's premieres with one another. So like they're obviously supporting each other. But would you see a little bit of like cutthroatness in between the two if they are competing for any of these categories? Whether it be it wouldn't be screenplay because I guess they'll be in different screenplay categories. But in that director race, it would be fun to see the two of them campaign together.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to watch just to see how they interact with each other if they're both nominated.
Yeah. I was on Gold Derby the other day, which if you haven't heard of Gold Derby, it's a place where people will put like odds and predictions for the Oscar race. And one thing that I thought was pretty interesting is they actually had Pedro Almodovar pretty high for Pain and Glory. Do you think you obviously mentioned the Pavel Pawlikowski nomination? Do you think that he could maybe be like sort of that sleeper foreign film nomination that sneaks in at the last moment?
If we're talking sleeper in the context of Pain and Glory, we're going to talk about Antonio Banderas and Best Actor.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think again that Best Actor race is another one that's really deep and really competitive. But Antonio Banderas, I would say, is probably
his career best. I think it's his career best,
without a doubt. But do you think Pedro has any chance of getting in there for Pain and Glory?
No, I wouldn't say. Considering how competitive it is now with the people we've mentioned, I don't think he has a chance.
Okay, interesting. Because I think he does sort of have like that sleeper chance, sort of like we were mentioning Pavel. But again, this category, while it's not particularly deep at the top, it is very competitive. And these movies are so well respected. I think the only thing that's hurting Pedro, or the biggest thing that's hurting Pedro, is that not as many people will see his movie as some of these other movies. And if people want to put their energy behind it, other than in a category like foreign film, it's going to get that actor push. I do want to talk a little bit about Todd Phillips in this category. Obviously Todd Phillips continues to shoot himself in the foot with these comments that he's making and whatnot. But on like a technical level, Joker has been like nothing but praised by Academy voters. Again, like if you follow actors, directors, writers, even DPs and other sort of behind the scenes craft individuals that do likely have votes, these people are praising Joker. I think it's pretty locked in a lot of these craft categories like production design and maybe even score and stuff like that. Do you think that sort of backing from the people that are behind the scenes that do make up a good contingent of the Academy could actually get Phillips close to getting that nomination or even slipping in there?
I don't know. I mean, it did achieve the first 1 billion at the
Yes.
box office for an R-rated movie. So,
Hmm.
um, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, you're talking about sleeper picks and you're talking about Pain and Glory.
Hmm.
I would say Pain and Glory would have a higher chance as Todd Phillips just because of the controversy surrounding his comments and how it's been perceived by people and audience members.
Sure.
It'd be it's 50-50. I say 50-50.
That's interesting. Yeah. Between like Pedro and Todd, you'd rather see Pedro get in there, and you think
Definitely.
Pedro probably has a better chance.
Yeah, you know my thoughts on Joker, so
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go ahead and close this thing out then by let me go ahead and get your 5 sort of prediction. If you had to like lock in a 5 today, and obviously this will change down the road, but if I had to ask you for your 5 today, who do you think it is?
I'm saying Scorsese, Tarantino, Bong, Mendez, and Baumbach.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. I have the same 4. I have up to Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, Bong Joon-ho, Noah Baumbach, and I think in that last slot, I'm gonna put Mariel Heller right now. I think A
Ooh.
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and this might be my personal bias coming in there. I think, but A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood it's a feel-good movie, and I think a lot of people are going to see this movie not because
and it has
of
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, well, Tom Hanks is in there. Mr. Rogers' Story, obviously, that documentary did really well last year and was well respected.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're in an interesting place right now because like half of these movies have been seen by the public and half of these movies have not been seen by the public, and you obviously have a better idea of it once the movie opens up because the box office obviously impacts that determines how many people have seen the movie. And a movie like Joker that has now made $1 billion, as you mentioned, Sam, is going to help its case. But that's why Bohemian Rhapsody got in the race last year. People saw that movie, and even though critics didn't like that movie, a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people did like it, and it managed to get into everything. Like it won Best Actor, got into Best Picture. It was in everything, and I think A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood will be seen by more people than most of these. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood will probably be the most seen of these movies that we're talking about right now.
Right.
But The Irishman, I don't think a lot of people are going to sit down and watch a 3.5-hour movie, even if it is on Netflix. Parasite is a foreign film, so its box office has been it's been doing well for foreign, but it hasn't been doing particularly well compared to a lot of other things. Marriage Story is a tiny movie. Little Women has some draws with its cast and the story that is like it's an old timely story. People respect it. 1917, that's still kind of a hard thing to talk about right now because we haven't really heard much about it. But A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, it's Tom Hanks, it's Mr. Rogers, it's feel good, it's happy, it's doing well with critics, it's got good Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic score. I think that's going to help Mariel Heller's case, and people love her. She was right there, sort of on the edge when she made "Can You Ever Forgive Me," which was one of my favorite movies of that year. And I think that popularity factor it's gonna play into one of these movies, and I think it could actually really help A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
You don't think the Russos could get in because of Endgame? Because you talk about popularity and box office. You don't think the Russos could get in?
That's interesting. I think, again, we sort of had this conversation a little bit last week. But if a movie is going to be propelled by like major box office, like, talking like hundreds of millions of dollars, I think it's going to be Rise of Skywalker. The Russo brothers, people like them. People like the Russo brothers, but JJ is just like, he's sort of like a godly type figure to a lot of people, like, whether that be nerds, fans, or even people in the Academy, people in the industry, people in Hollywood. People love JJ.
It'll be interesting to see how he does Skywalker because he usually starts things. He doesn't like really cap things off.
Yeah.
This is the end of a trilogy, the end of like a saga. So I'm really curious. I wouldn't say JJ for best director, but I'm just curious to see how he handled Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, and again, this all is going to be sort of determined by what people think of the movie at the end of the day. Right. Especially in comparison with Endgame, which was pretty well beloved by almost everybody. But I think JJ has enough respect to where, again, like I don't think he really necessarily has a shot at this director slot. But if either of these big caliber Disney releases that are culminating an entire arc of a story, if it's going to be one of them, I think it's going to be Skywalker that gets the praise between the two.
Okay.
Again, we've talked about how Disney's not putting a lot. They are campaigning for Endgame, but like it's not really heavy campaigning. And I wonder if that is because like they're sort of saving their dollars for Skywalker. Like it's interesting because at this point of the year, like Black Panther was like everywhere, right?
Right.
Black Panther, they campaigned so hard. They spent so much money on that movie to get it into its nominations, deservedly so. It's a great movie. But like it's weird that a movie that is now the highest grossing movie of all time is well received by audiences and critics alike. Audiences obviously love it. It had like a 80 something on Metacritic, which is really good for these kind of movies. And it's weird. It's weird that we haven't seen much promotional FYC stuff for that movie, and that just lends me to believe that they might be sort of like coyly like saving their cards for Skywalker. And I think
so. You're saying like maybe JJ is like a dark horse for this race?
It gives me some sort of hope in Skywalker. Not that even necessarily it might even be an Oscar contender, but it's that like Disney is very confident in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the box office and stuff like that, because obviously it's going to do well. It's the culmination of 40 plus years of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But Avengers Endgame is, I don't think Rise of Skywalker is going to be the highest grossing movie of all time like Avengers Endgame. And you would think that a movie that did so well at the box office and amongst people reception-wise would get a little bit more backing from Disney after the way that Black Panther performed, because that was one of the highest grossing movies.
It's an embarrassment of riches, essentially.
Oh yeah, it very much is. But again, like I think it's, if Disney is putting their backing anywhere right now, for some reason, I'm sort of leaning towards Skywalker. Something about their campaign for Endgame doesn't feel right, and to me, I could be like way off in predicting this, but to me that sort of indicates that they feel like they have something special in Skywalker.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, if you considering all the things you mentioned and just how quiet it is surrounding Endgame and the campaigning, I think yeah.
All right. So do you have any sort of closing thoughts here, Sam?
No closing thoughts. Go watch Ford's Ferrari, Waves, Honey Boy.
Yes.
Tell us your thoughts on Mandalorian. Just let us know what you think in our social media.
Yeah.
You can find me at Sam0So on Twitter and Sam Osorio on Instagram.
Yeah. Like Sam said, go check out some of these movies. Also, if you didn't have the chance yet, we released a bonus episode in the middle of the week, sort of just 20 minutes of us talking about Disney Plus and our initial thoughts on it. So go check that out as well if you haven't had the chance to listen. You can find me everywhere online at Raj Sawhney 94. Thanks again for joining us for episode 3, and join us again next week.